The little girl was barefoot in the rain, clutching a broken pink shoe in one hand and crying so quietly that most people walking past her never noticed. Daniel Carter did. He noticed because he knew what lonely looked like. He knew what it meant for a child to stand in a crowded world and feel as if nobody was coming. Daniel was a single father. He had spent the last 6 years learning how to recognize the difference between a child who was simply upset and one who was terrified. This little girl was terrified. Daniel was driving home through downtown Columbus, Ohio, just after 7 on a rainy Thursday evening. His 8-year-old daughter, Lily, sat beside him in the passenger seat, complaining cheerfully about the math worksheet waiting on the kitchen table. Then Lily suddenly stopped talking. "Daddy." Daniel glanced over. She was staring through the windshield. "There's a little girl over there." Daniel followed her gaze. Near the entrance of a closed pharmacy, beneath a flickering street lamp, stood a child who looked no older than 7. Alone. Soaked. Barefoot. Daniel's stomach tightened. He pulled the truck to the curb. "Stay here," he told Lily. But Lily grabbed his sleeve. "Daddy, she needs somebody." Daniel looked at his daughter, then at the girl. He knew there were reasons adults were warned not to approach unknown children. There were laws, procedures, dangers, and questions. But there was also a terrified child standing barefoot in the rain. Daniel stepped out. "Hey," he called gently. "My name is Daniel. Are you okay?" The girl immediately backed away. Daniel stopped. "That's okay. I'm not going to come any closer." Her lower lip trembled. "Where's your mommy?" The girl's eyes filled with tears. "She said she'd come back." Daniel's heart sank. "When?" The girl looked at the empty street. "Before it got dark." Daniel glanced at his watch. It was already dark. He crouched several feet away. "What's your name?" "Ruby." "Ruby, that's a beautiful name." She stared at him suspiciously. Daniel smiled softly. "My daughter is in the truck. Her name is Lily. She's about your age." Ruby looked toward the truck. Lily waved. Ruby didn't wave back. But she stopped crying. Daniel took off his jacket and placed it on the wet sidewalk between them. "You can have this." Ruby looked at it. "You're going to get cold." "I've survived worse." That earned the tiniest flicker of a smile. Daniel pointed toward the jacket. "You can pick it up yourself." "I won't touch you." Ruby slowly walked forward. She grabbed the jacket and wrapped it around herself. Then she whispered something that Daniel almost didn't hear. "My mommy told me never to talk to strangers." Daniel nodded. "Your mommy is right." Ruby looked confused. "Then why are you talking to me?" Daniel smiled sadly. "Because sometimes strangers have to help until someone you know gets here." For the next 20 minutes, Daniel tried to learn what had happened. Ruby remembered going into a cafe with her mother. She remembered her mother receiving a phone call. She remembered someone arguing outside. Then she remembered being told to stay near the pharmacy entrance while her mother went to get help. Ruby waited. And waited. Then the rain came. Daniel called the police. While they waited, Lily climbed out of the truck with an umbrella and stood beside him. "What's your favorite color?" Lily asked Ruby. "Purple." "Mine is blue." Ruby thought about that. "Purple is better." Lily gasped dramatically. Daniel laughed. And for the first time, Ruby smiled. 20 minutes later, a police cruiser arrived. An officer spoke with Ruby while another officer took Daniel's information. Then Ruby suddenly grabbed Daniel's hand. "Don't leave." Daniel looked down. Her fingers were tiny and cold. "I won't leave until you're safe." The officer tried to reassure her. "We'll find your mother." Ruby shook her head. "She'll find me." Daniel noticed something strange. "You're very sure about that?" Ruby looked at him. She always finds me. The next hour was a blur. The police discovered that Ruby had been reported missing less than an hour earlier. But something about the case didn't make sense. There was no normal custody dispute. No frantic family members at the scene. Instead, within minutes, police vehicles began arriving from different directions. Then an SUV pulled up. 2 security guards jumped out. A woman in a dark coat stepped from the back seat. She wasn't crying. She wasn't shouting. She simply stood there, staring across the sidewalk. At Ruby. And Ruby screamed. "Mommy." She ran. The woman dropped to her knees. Ruby crashed into her arms. The woman held her so tightly that Daniel could see her shoulders shaking. "My baby." Ruby buried her face against her mother's chest. "I waited like you said." "I know. I didn't move. You did everything right." Then the woman looked over Ruby's head. Her eyes landed on Daniel. For several seconds, she said nothing. Then she stood. "Are you Daniel Carter?" Daniel frowned. "Yes." The woman's expression changed. Not surprise. Recognition. "How do you know my name?" The woman looked toward one of the security guards. "Because I asked my team to find the men who helped my daughter." Daniel glanced at Lily. "Your daughter was alone in the rain. Anyone would have helped." The woman shook her head. "No. They didn't." Daniel didn't understand. She walked closer. "My name is Victoria Whitmore." Daniel's eyebrows rose. Even Daniel knew that name. Victoria Whitmore was one of the wealthiest women in Ohio. A technology entrepreneur whose company had recently been valued at several $billion. Daniel suddenly felt uncomfortable. "I don't need anything," he said quickly. Victoria stared at him. "I haven't offered you anything." "You're about to." For the first time, a faint smile appeared on her face. "Maybe." Ruby tugged on her mother's coat. "Mommy, he gave me his jacket." Victoria looked down at the oversized jacket wrapped around Ruby. Then she looked back at Daniel. "Thank you." Daniel nodded. "Just keep her warm." Victoria hesitated. Then she said something that made Daniel's entire body go still. "Daniel, I need to tell you why Ruby was waiting there." He glanced at Lily. "Is she okay?" "Yes." "Then what happened?" Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "I wasn't supposed to leave her." Daniel waited. Victoria took a breath. "Someone has been threatening me." Daniel's expression hardened. "Threatening you?" 4 months. She explained that she had received anonymous messages warning her that if she didn't sell part of her company, someone would hurt the person she loved most. Ruby. Victoria had increased security. Changed vehicles. Changed schools. Changed routines. But that afternoon, someone had followed them. Victoria realized it too late. She had taken Ruby into the cafe. Then received a message saying that a man was outside. She panicked. She told Ruby to stay near the pharmacy while she went to get help from a security driver parked nearby. But before she could reach him, a vehicle sped away. Victoria ran back. Ruby was gone. For nearly an hour, she thought someone had taken her daughter. "I thought I'd lost her," Victoria whispered. Daniel looked at Ruby, who was now holding Lily's hand. "Then why did you say she was waiting for you?" Victoria's face crumpled. "Because Ruby didn't tell anyone the whole truth." Daniel looked toward the little girl. Ruby's eyes dropped. "Ruby." The child squeezed Lily's hand. "I wasn't supposed to tell." Victoria's voice softened. "It's okay now." Ruby looked at Daniel. Then she slowly reached into the pocket of his jacket. She pulled out a small piece of folded paper. Daniel frowned. "What's that?" Ruby handed it to him. Daniel opened it. There was a name written on it. And beneath the name was an address. Daniel stared. "Where did you get this?" Ruby whispered, "The man who was following Mommy gave it to me." Victoria went pale. Security immediately moved closer. Daniel handed the paper over. But before anyone could say anything, Ruby spoke again. He told me Mommy would be safe if I gave it to somebody. Victoria closed her eyes. Daniel suddenly understood. Ruby hadn't simply gotten lost. She had been deliberately placed in the path of a stranger. A stranger who would find her. A stranger who would call the police. A stranger who would unknowingly deliver the message. Daniel felt a chill crawl down his spine. Then why did he let her go? Victoria stared at the paper. Because he wanted me to find it. Police took the information and began investigating immediately. Later that night, Victoria offered Daniel money. He refused. She offered him a job. He refused that too. Daniel, she said, almost frustrated, you saved my daughter's life. No, Daniel replied. I gave her a jacket and stayed with her. You did something else. What? You treated her like a person. Daniel looked at Ruby. She was sitting in the back seat of Victoria's SUV beside Lily, sharing a packet of crackers. Victoria's voice became quieter. Most people saw a billionaire's daughter tonight. You saw a scared little girl. Daniel shrugged. She's 7. Victoria looked down. My daughter has spent her whole life surrounded by people who want something from her. Daniel understood that more than she realized. Then maybe what she needs isn't another person trying to give her something. Victoria looked at him. What does she need? Someone who stays. The words hit her hard. Victoria looked toward Ruby. Daniel continued. Kids remember who stayed. Victoria's eyes filled. Her father didn't. Daniel froze. He hadn't known Ruby's father was gone. Victoria swallowed. He died when she was 3. Daniel looked away. I'm sorry. He was the only person who ever treated me like I was just Victoria. Not a company. Not a fortune. Not a name. Daniel nodded. Then you know exactly what your daughter needs. Victoria looked at him for a long moment. What about Lily? Daniel glanced at his daughter. What about her? You're doing this alone too. Daniel smiled. Most days. Victoria smiled through her tears. So am I. 3 weeks later, the threats were traced to a former business partner. And Ruby was finally safe. But something unexpected happened afterward. Victoria began visiting Daniel's small auto repair shop. Not with cameras. Not with assistants. Just Victoria. Sometimes Ruby came with her. Lily and Ruby became inseparable. And Daniel discovered that the billionaire's daughter was terrible at soccer but remarkably good at stealing French fries. One afternoon, Ruby sat beside Daniel while he worked beneath an old pickup. Daniel. Yeah. Are you still a stranger? Daniel slid out from beneath the truck. He looked at her. No. Ruby smiled. Good. She wrapped her little arms around his neck. Daniel froze for half a second before hugging her back. Across the garage, Victoria watched them. Daniel caught her eye. She wiped away a tear. He smiled. Months earlier, Daniel had thought. The worst thing about being a single father was having to do everything alone. That rainy night taught him something different. Sometimes family doesn't arrive because you're related by blood. Sometimes it arrives barefoot, frightened, and carrying a broken pink shoe. Sometimes kindness begins with something as simple as taking off your jacket. And sometimes, when you choose to stay beside someone who has nobody else, you don't just change their life. You discover that they have quietly changed yours, too.